Hello, everyone, and welcome back to today's podcast. We're so glad you're joining us. Whether you're at home, on your commute, or in the middle of a busy day, we've got a topic that's going to help you level up your communication skills, especially when it comes to the digital world. Today, we're diving into English for online communication, how to write better emails, chat professionally, and nail online etiquette. It's more important than ever to get this right, so you're in the right place if you want to communicate with confidence.
Hi, Adam. I'm super excited about today's episode too. Honestly, we all use digital communication every single day, right? Whether it's emails, instant messages, or even social media, we're constantly sending messages to one another. But here's the thing. Sometimes it's hard to get the tone and message just right. It's not like having a face-to-face conversation where you can hear someone's voice or see their body language.
Exactly. That's the challenge. When we communicate online, it can be easy for things to get misunderstood. A simple phrase can sound rude or come across the wrong way if we're not careful. And for anyone who's tried to send a professional email or message, you know it can be tricky to strike the right balance between polite, clear, and to the point.
And that's why we're here today. We want to help our listeners learn how to communicate more clearly, confidently, and professionally. Whether you're working from home, managing a team, or even just trying to improve how you chat with friends or co-workers, these skills are essential in the digital age.
Absolutely. So, in this episode, we'll cover everything from writing that perfect subject line to understanding when it's okay to be formal or informal in your messages. By the end of this episode, you'll have some practical tips that you can use immediately to improve your online communication. Let's get started. Let's kick things off with one of the most important but often overlooked parts of an email, the subject line. Now think about it. When you're scrolling through your inbox, what makes you open an email? It's usually the subject line, right? The subject line is your first chance to make an impression. If it's too vague or doesn't stand out, there's a good chance it'll be ignored. A weak subject line is like sending an invitation to a party without telling anyone where or when it's happening. It doesn't give enough information to get their attention, and that's a huge missed opportunity. You want your subject line to clearly tell the recipient what the email is about, but also make them curious enough to open it. For example, instead of using something generic like update on project, be specific. A better subject could be Project XYZ, milestone update, and next steps. That gives the reader exactly what to expect, and it's still short enough to get their attention. The goal here is clarity. Make sure they know what the email is about right away. You only have a few words, so use them wisely.
Absolutely, Adam. And what you said about clarity is key. But let's not forget about another important factor, keeping it concise. You've got to remember that people are busy, and they don't want to spend time figuring out what your email is about. If your subject line is long or overly complicated, there's a good chance they'll just scroll past it. So, while you want to be clear, you also want to be brief. You only have a few seconds to grab someone's attention, and the subject line is your window of opportunity. Think about it. Long subject lines can get cut off depending on the email platform, so you want to make sure your key message is right there at the beginning. Another thing to consider is urgency. Sometimes, especially in a professional setting, you need to communicate urgency without sounding too pushy. For example, action required. Report due tomorrow gives a sense of urgency, but it doesn't sound overly dramatic. You're simply making it clear that something important needs attention. But, like Adam said, don't overdo it. If you constantly use urgent language, it can start to lose its impact. It's about balance, clarity, brevity, and a little bit of strategy to make sure your email stands out. All right, let's talk about the heart of any email, the body of your message. Whether you're emailing a colleague, a client, or your boss, one thing is crucial: politeness. You might be in a rush or frustrated, but how you express yourself matters. Starting with a polite greeting, like "Dear Mr. Smith," or even a friendly "Hello, Mr. Smith," sets the tone right away. It shows that you respect the person you're addressing, and it creates a positive first impression. Think about it. Email is a written medium, so it's easy for your tone to get lost. Without facial expressions or body language, the way you phrase things can change how they're received. The next step is clarity. People are busy, and they don't have time to sift through a lengthy, complicated message. Get to the point quickly and break your message into clear, digestible sections. That way, the reader doesn't have to spend extra time figuring out what you're trying to say. For example, if you're requesting something, instead of writing, "I need the report," say something like, "Could you please send me the report by Friday?" It's respectful, clear, and leaves no room for confusion.
Absolutely, Sophia, you nailed it. Now, the tricky part for many people is finding that balance between being polite and professional without sounding too stiff or too casual. We've all received emails that are either too formal and robotic or way too casual, right? And neither of those come across as effective or professional. For example, if you're writing to a colleague you've worked with for a while, you don't need to be overly formal like you would with a boss or client, but you still want to maintain professionalism. So instead of saying, "Give me that report," which can sound rude and commanding, a better approach would be, "Could you please send me the report by Tuesday?" This way, you're polite, clear, and respectful. It also shows that you value the other person's time and effort. Politeness doesn't just mean using please and thank you. It's about being considerate in your language, showing that you acknowledge the person's position and workload. And clarity is the best way to avoid any confusion or misinterpretation. The more straightforward you are with your request, the easier it is for the other person to respond promptly and with the right information. All right, let's switch gears now and talk about chatting. Chatting online is a little different from emails, isn't it? It's usually quicker, more spontaneous, but still just as important to maintain a professional tone, especially in the workplace. In many cases, the lines between casual and professional communication are blurred. It's easy to slip into shorthand or use informal language when you're sending quick messages. But remember, just because it's faster doesn't mean it's okay to be careless with your tone. A quick, "Hey, what's up?" might be fine for friends, but if you're messaging a coworker or a client, you need to keep things professional. A simple, "Hello, Mr. Smith, how are you?" is a much better choice. That initial greeting sets the tone for the conversation. Another thing is pacing. When you're chatting, it's easy to feel like you need to reply instantly. But take a moment before responding, especially when you're trying to convey something important. Quick responses can sometimes come off as rushed or abrupt, and that's not the impression you want to leave. Professional chatting doesn't mean being overly formal, but it's about respecting the person on the other end and keeping the conversation focused and clear.
Exactly, Adam. I think one of the biggest challenges with chat is that it's so informal by nature, and it's easy to get comfortable with shortcuts. But here's the thing, just because you're sending a quick message doesn't mean you should throw out the basics of good communication. When you're chatting in a professional setting, you want to avoid using too many emojis, abbreviations, or slang terms. Sure, a smiley face can make your message feel friendly, but overdoing it can make you look unprofessional. The same goes for abbreviations. Things like "you" instead of "you" or the "x" instead of "thanks" may seem fast, but they can come across as lazy or even dismissive. Stick to full sentences and always make sure your message sounds clear and polite. For example, "thanks" can work in some contexts, but in a professional chat, "thank you for your help" sounds much more appreciative. And remember, tone can easily be misinterpreted online. Because there's no body language or vocal inflection to guide us, even a short message like "okay" can sound like you're annoyed or uninterested. That's why it's so important to double-check your tone before hitting send. Small changes like that can make a big difference in how your message is received.
Okay, let's talk about something that can be a little tricky: handling complaints and negative feedback, especially in writing. Whether it's an email or a chat message, getting feedback, particularly if it's critical, can feel uncomfortable. But here's the thing: how you respond, is just as important as the feedback itself. When someone is unhappy or has a complaint, you have an opportunity to show empathy and professionalism. The first thing you want to do is acknowledge their feelings. You don't need to agree with everything they say, but you should show that you understand their concerns. For example, saying something like, "I'm sorry to hear that you're having this experience," shows empathy and makes the person feel heard. This doesn't mean you're admitting fault, but it helps diffuse any tension. After that, you can move into problem-solving mode. Offer a solution or explain how you plan to resolve the issue. Avoid being defensive or making excuses. That will only escalate the situation. Remember, it's not about winning an argument. It's about finding a solution that works for both parties. And always, always thank the person for their feedback. It shows that you appreciate them bringing the issue to your attention and gives you an opportunity to improve.
Exactly, Adam. When it comes to handling negative feedback, your tone is everything. Whether you're responding to a customer complaint, a colleague, or even your boss, you need to stay calm and composed. If someone's upset, it's easy to get defensive or frustrated, but that's the last thing you want to do. Like you said, acknowledging their feelings is key. A simple, "I understand your frustration," or "I can see why this would be disappointing," shows that you're taking their concerns seriously. It's also important to remain professional and avoid using emotional language. Saying something like, "I'm sorry you're upset," can be seen as patronizing if not framed properly. Instead, "I'm sorry for the inconvenience this has caused you," is more neutral and respectful. Now, when it comes to resolving the issue, be as clear and specific as possible. If there's a misunderstanding, clarify the facts politely, and if there's a solution to the problem, outline it step by step. Be transparent about what you can and cannot do. If the issue can't be resolved immediately, offer a time frame for when the person can expect an update. This sets the right expectations and shows that you're actively working on a solution. And, like you said, thanking the person for their feedback is essential. Let them know their input is valuable to you and that you're committed to improving.
Let's talk about something essential that often gets overlooked: proofreading. It might sound basic, but you'd be surprised how many people forget to do it. We're all in a rush sometimes, right? Whether you're sending an email, writing a report, or chatting with someone online, it's easy to just write your message and hit send. But here's the thing. Those tiny mistakes, whether it's a spelling error, a missing word, or a punctuation slip, can have a big impact. They can make you seem careless or unprofessional, even if the content of your message is solid. The good news is that proofreading is simple and quick, and it makes a huge difference. When you reread your message before sending, you give yourself a chance to catch those errors. Even if you're in a hurry, it's worth the extra minute to double-check your writing. And let's not forget about tone. Sometimes a missed comma or a misplaced apostrophe can change the meaning of a sentence entirely, leading to confusion. So, it's not just about finding mistakes, it's also about making sure your message is clear. This small step can elevate the professionalism of your communication and ensure you're always putting your best foot forward.
Absolutely, Adam. Proofreading is one of those things that often gets overlooked, but it's one of the simplest ways to avoid looking unprofessional. Imagine you're sending an important email to a client or your boss. The content of your message might be perfect, but if there are grammar mistakes or spelling errors, it can completely change how it's received. It may come off as careless or rushed, and no one wants that reputation. That's why taking a moment to reread your message before sending it is so crucial. But here's the thing, it's not just about catching errors. Proofreading also helps you ensure that your message is clear and easy to understand. Sometimes when we're writing quickly, we leave out words or phrases that make our meaning unclear. And let's face it, in professional settings, misunderstandings can lead to problems. If you can, tools like Grammarly are great to use. They give you an extra layer of help. They can catch spelling and grammar mistakes, and some even help with tone. But remember, even with a tool, you should still read through your message yourself. You know your message better than any software, so it's important to check for context and make sure everything flows smoothly. One of the things that trips people up in professional communication is understanding when to be formal and when to be informal. And the thing is, it can vary depending on the situation and the people involved. For example, if you're emailing your boss or a client, you'll want to keep the tone formal. This shows respect and professionalism. On the other hand, if you're chatting with a colleague you've worked with for a while, it's okay to be a bit more relaxed. But even then, you should still make sure you're not crossing any lines. Formal communication typically follows a structure and uses polite language. For instance, instead of saying, "Send me the report," a formal way to ask would be, "Could you please send me the report by Friday?" It's clear, polite, and respectful. But with someone you know well, like a colleague, you can take a more casual approach. "Hey, can you send me that report when you get a chance?" Feels much more relaxed but still gets the point across. It's all about knowing your audience and the situation.
Exactly. And that's the key. Context is everything. The formality of your communication should reflect the relationship you have with the person you're addressing, as well as the nature of the conversation. If you're in a work setting, it's better to lean on the formal side, especially when you're first starting to communicate with someone or dealing with someone in a higher position than you. But once you establish a rapport, it's okay to loosen up a little bit. For example, you might start off with a formal email like, "Dear Sophia, I hope this email finds you well. Could you please assist with..." But after working together for a while, you might find that it's okay to drop the formalities and say something like, "Hi Sophia, quick question. Can you send me the report when you have a moment?" It's still polite, but it's more relaxed and friendly. The most important rule to remember is, when in doubt, always err on the side of being too formal rather than too casual. You can always tone things down later, but it's much harder to recover if you start too casually, especially in a professional setting. All right, let's dive into a small but important part of email communication, the sign-off. How you end an email can say a lot about your tone and your relationship with the recipient. It's like the handshake at the end of a conversation. For formal emails, especially to people you don't know well, or in professional contexts like to your boss or a client, you want to keep it respectful. A simple, "Sincerely," "Best regards," or "Kind regards" works really well. They show professionalism and are appropriate for almost any formal setting. "Sincerely" is the most formal and works great for official business or legal matters. "Best regards" and "Kind regards" are still professional, but have a slightly warmer tone, which is great for clients or colleagues you've built a rapport with. The key is to match your sign-off with the overall tone of your message. If you've kept it formal, a formal sign-off makes sense. But if your email is a little more casual, like you're emailing a colleague you know well, you can tone it down a bit. Something like "Cheers" or "Take care" works well in those cases.
Exactly, Adam. And while you want to be formal when the situation calls for it, don't forget that email sign-offs are also an opportunity to add a personal touch. Just don't go overboard. For example, if you're emailing a colleague you've worked with for a while, best wishes or warm regards might be perfect because they still keep the tone professional, but they also feel a bit friendlier. It's about finding that balance. Now, when it comes to more casual emails, say to a coworker you chat with regularly or a team member, you don't need to be so rigid. A simple thanks or "see you soon" can keep it light while still being respectful. But remember, even in casual emails, you should avoid sign-offs like "later" or "peace." They might be too informal and can come across as unprofessional, depending on your relationship with the person. And as Adam said, context is everything. If you're ever unsure, go for a more formal sign-off. It's always safer. You can always relax it later when you're comfortable with the person.
Now let's talk about something that's often overlooked but incredibly important: online etiquette, particularly respecting privacy and boundaries. In a world where everything is so connected, it's easy to forget that not everyone is as comfortable sharing personal information or responding at all hours. So, it's essential to be aware of your communication style. For example, if you're emailing or messaging someone, make sure you're respecting their time and privacy. Don't expect an immediate response, especially if it's outside of regular working hours. People have lives outside of work, and respecting their boundaries can help foster a healthier, more respectful relationship. Also, when you're communicating online, always be mindful of the information you're sharing, especially if it's sensitive or confidential. In a professional setting, always ask if it's okay to share something or if someone prefers to communicate privately. And with emails and messages, avoid oversharing. Some things are best discussed in person or in private meetings, not through emails that can be forwarded to anyone.
Absolutely, Adam. One of the biggest challenges with online communication today is finding that balance between being connected and respecting boundaries. It's tempting to send quick messages, expecting instant replies, but we have to remember that everyone has different schedules, and not everyone wants to be contacted after hours. It's important to set expectations up front. For example, if you know that someone works late, let them reply when they can, and don't pressure them for an answer right away. In addition, respecting privacy extends beyond just work hours. It's also about the content of your messages. When you're discussing work-related matters, try to avoid personal details unless necessary, and always consider whether sharing certain information could compromise someone's privacy. For instance, never forward someone's private message or email without their permission, even if it's just among colleagues. A great rule of thumb is, if you wouldn't say something in person, don't say it online. The internet and emails can feel more impersonal, but the same principles of respect and courtesy apply. And always remember, just because someone doesn't respond immediately doesn't mean they're ignoring you. It's just part of respecting their boundaries and their time.
All right, Sophia. Let's dive into a topic that's crucial but often overlooked when it comes to online communication: active listening. Now, we all know active listening is a big deal in face-to-face conversations, but it's just as important in online interactions. The challenge is that without visual cues like body language or tone of voice, it's easy to skim through emails, chats, or messages without fully understanding what the person is trying to communicate. And that can lead to miscommunication or even frustration on both sides. So, active listening is more than just hearing the words. It's about really understanding the message, context, and the underlying feelings behind it. In a professional setting especially, it's so important to show that you're not just replying quickly, but that you're truly engaged in the conversation.
Absolutely, Adam. And I think a big part of this is not just reading the words, but paying attention to the emotion behind the message. Let's say a colleague sends you a message saying, "I'm frustrated with the delays in the project, and it's causing a lot of stress." Now, instead of just responding with, "Got it," or something simple like, "I'll look into it," it's important to acknowledge their feelings and let them know you understand where they're coming from. A response like, "I can hear your frustration, and I understand how stressful this situation must be. Let's work together to find a solution," shows that you're not only hearing the problem, but empathizing with their situation. Active listening, especially online, helps you avoid jumping into solutions too quickly without understanding the real issue.
Exactly. And one key way to practice active listening online is by paraphrasing or summarizing what the person has said. When you paraphrase, it shows the other person that you've really understood them, and it also gives them a chance to clarify anything that might have been misunderstood. For example, if someone says, "I think the project timeline is unrealistic," you might respond with, "So it sounds like you're concerned that the timeline might not be achievable. Is that correct?" This approach not only reassures the other person that you're paying attention, but also gives them an opportunity to correct or elaborate if needed.
That's a great point, Adam. And don't forget the importance of asking follow-up questions. When you actively listen, It opens up space for deeper conversations. By asking thoughtful questions, you're showing that you're invested in the conversation and care about the details. For example, if someone is explaining a problem with a client, instead of just nodding along or offering a quick fix, ask, "What do you think is causing the issue with the client?" Or, "Can you tell me more about what's been happening on their side?" Asking these kinds of questions not only gives you more insight into the problem, but also helps the person feel like their concerns are being valued and understood.
Right. And I think one of the big benefits of active listening, especially online, is that it leads to more effective problem solving. When you take the time to fully understand what the other person is saying, you're much more likely to come up with a solution that addresses their actual needs or concerns, rather than just jumping in with a one-size-fits-all response. So, if you're someone who's constantly working in teams or collaborating on projects, the more you actively listen, the stronger those relationships will become. People will start to feel heard, valued, and respected, and that's key for fostering trust and collaboration.
Exactly, Adam. Active listening builds trust and helps create a positive, respectful work environment. And let's not forget, it also improves the quality of communication. When people feel like you're truly listening, they're more likely to share important details, ask for feedback, and communicate openly with you. It's the difference between just exchanging information and building a meaningful dialogue. In online communication, where things can often feel a bit disconnected, practicing active listening is one of the most powerful ways to bridge that gap and make your interactions more productive and authentic.
Absolutely, Sophia. And before we wrap up, let's remind our listeners of one final tip. Active listening online also means not jumping to conclusions or making assumptions. Sometimes, a message can seem direct or even a little harsh, but that doesn't necessarily mean the sender is upset. Always give people the benefit of the doubt, and when in doubt, ask for clarification before assuming the worst. This mindset keeps conversations respectful and prevents misunderstandings. So, to sum it up, active listening is all about understanding, empathizing, and engaging in a way that makes the other person feel heard. Whether it's through paraphrasing, asking questions, or simply taking a moment to process what's being said, active listening online is one of the best ways to improve your communication.
Exactly. And if you take nothing else from this chapter, remember this: great online communication starts with being a great listener. The better you listen, the better your responses will be, and the stronger your relationships, whether with clients, colleagues, or even friends, will become. So practice active listening in every online conversation, and you'll see the difference it makes.
All right, let's dive into something that can cause a lot of headaches, especially in today's globalized work environment: time zone differences. Now, with so many people working remotely across different countries, understanding and managing time zones is critical to effective communication. The biggest issue, of course, is that not everyone works on the same schedule. So, if you're emailing someone on the other side of the world, expecting an instant reply, that's not realistic. They might be asleep, or it's the middle of their lunch break. One thing I've learned is that you need to be mindful of when you're sending messages and setting meetings. For example, sending an email late in the evening might seem normal to you, but for someone on the other side of the world, it's the middle of the night. That could lead to frustration or delayed responses. So, how do we deal with this, Sophia?
Great point, Adam. Time zone differences can definitely be a tricky thing to navigate, but with a little planning and awareness, it can be managed really well. One strategy is to use time zone converters or apps like Google Calendar that automatically adjust times when scheduling meetings. For instance, if you're in New York and you need to schedule a meeting with someone in Tokyo, Google Calendar will convert the time for both of you so you don't have to do the math yourself. But it's not just about finding a time that works for everyone. It's also about setting expectations. If you're working with someone who's in a very different time zone, it's important to communicate that you might not be available immediately and you may need a little more time to respond. Setting clear expectations around response times is crucial to avoid frustration.
Absolutely. And I think the key is flexibility. You have to be open to adjusting your own schedule occasionally to accommodate your team members or clients in different time zones. This doesn't mean you should be available 24/7, but being proactive about scheduling meetings at times that are reasonable for everyone shows that you respect their time. For example, if you know you have a team member in a different time zone, and they typically work later hours, try to schedule meetings during those times when it's convenient for them. Flexibility like this builds goodwill and helps foster positive working relationships. I also suggest you always confirm time zone differences when scheduling. Sometimes people assume they're on the same page, but without that clarity, things can get messy.
That's such an important point, Adam. Miscommunication about time zones happens more often than people realize. I've had situations where I thought I was scheduling a call at a time that worked for both parties, only to find out later that we were completely off. To avoid that, I always double-check the time zone when confirming the meeting. Even if it's something small, like adding a simple note in your email or calendar invite, this time is in your local time zone. It saves a lot of confusion, and, as you said, flexibility is key. If you're someone who is regularly working with teams in multiple time zones, try to rotate your availability. If you have early morning calls with one team in one week, switch it up the next week to accommodate another team in a different zone. That kind of give and take shows you're making an effort to meet everyone halfway.
Exactly. And don't forget about the importance of being considerate about after-hours communication. Just because you're working in a time zone where it's 9 a.m. doesn't mean the person you're emailing is ready to jump into action right away. I've learned the hard way that sending a message late at night, expecting a fast reply, can cause unnecessary stress for the other person. So, unless it's truly urgent, try to respect their hours and communicate with them during their workday. I'd also recommend setting working hours in your email signature or in your initial communication. That way, people know when they can expect to hear from you and when they shouldn't feel the need to respond immediately. I've found this to be especially useful when collaborating with international clients and teams.
That's such a great tip, Adam. Setting clear boundaries around your working hours can really help manage expectations and minimize unnecessary stress. It's all about balance, right? You want to be responsive, but you also want to respect everyone's time and personal space. One more thing I'd add is to have a backup plan in case you miss a meeting due to time zone confusion. Life happens, and sometimes people forget to factor in the time difference. If you're the one who misses the meeting, be quick to apologize and offer an alternative time. If the other person misses it, try to be understanding and flexible because it's probably a simple mix-up. Being patient and solution-oriented will help maintain a positive and professional relationship despite the occasional scheduling hiccup.
Right, Sophia. The key takeaway here is that while time zone differences can seem like a big hurdle, with a little effort and planning, it's totally manageable. Use the right tools, set expectations, be flexible, and always double-check the details. If you keep these principles in mind, you can ensure smooth, respectful communication no matter where you and your team or clients are located. Time zone differences are a part of the global work environment, but with a little awareness and thoughtfulness, they won't stand in your way. It's all about working together to find solutions.
Exactly, Adam. And remember, it's not just about syncing up meetings and emails, it's about showing respect for the other person's time and being understanding of their needs. When you do that, time zone differences don't feel like such a big challenge. They just become another part of the process. So, be proactive, be patient, and keep that flexibility in mind. You'll find that communication flows much more smoothly, even when the world feels like it's on different clocks.
All right, Sophia, let's dive into one of the most important aspects of online communication: building relationships. In our digital world, where most of our communication is happening through emails, chats, and video calls, it's crucial to remember that online communication is still about human connection. Whether you're connecting with a colleague, a client, or even someone you're mentoring, Building a solid, trusting relationship is key. And believe it or not, you can form stronger relationships online than you might think. It all comes down to being intentional in how you communicate and making an effort to be personable, empathetic, and responsive.
Absolutely, Adam. A lot of people assume that online communication is colder or less personal than face-to-face interaction. But that's not necessarily the case. The way we communicate online can still create genuine, meaningful connections. A big part of building relationships online is being consistent in your communication and showing that you care. Small touches like remembering someone's name, following up after meetings, or just acknowledging their hard work can go a long way. For example, if you had a call with a client and you talked about something personal, like a recent trip or a project they're excited about, follow up on that in your next email or message. It shows that you remember and care about them beyond just business matters.
Yes. That personal touch makes such a big difference, especially in professional settings. And speaking of professional settings, it's important to establish trust through your communication. Being reliable, transparent, and clear in your messages helps build credibility and trust, which are foundational for any strong relationship. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you're running late on a project or need more time for a task, communicate that early on rather than leaving the other person in the dark. Trust is built on consistency and reliability, and that's something that can really shine through online.
Exactly, Adam. Trust is everything. And one way to strengthen that is through active engagement. Don't just send a message and forget about it. Stay engaged. For instance, when you're working on a project with a team, actively participate in group chats, ask questions, and offer feedback. When you engage with people online in a thoughtful, timely manner, it shows that you value their input and that you're truly involved in the process. It also helps avoid misunderstandings that can happen when there's less back and forth. For example, if you're managing a team remotely, make sure to regularly check in with everyone and ask how things are going, rather than just sending a message and waiting for results. That extra engagement builds rapport and makes the relationship feel more authentic.
That's a great point, Sophia. The engagement aspect can't be overstated. The more you engage, the more you show people that you're there to collaborate and support them. And another thing I think is key is being mindful of the medium you're using. For instance, some conversations might be better suited for email, while others might require a quick chat or even a video call. Each medium has its place, and using the right one can make your communication more effective and meaningful. For example, if you're talking to a colleague about something complex or sensitive, a video call might be better than an email because you can both read body language and tone, which adds an extra layer of understanding.
Absolutely, Adam. And let's not forget the power of positive reinforcement. Building a relationship online is often about supporting and encouraging others, especially when it comes to work. Acknowledge achievements, celebrate milestones, and give credit where it's due. For instance, after a successful meeting, send a message thanking everyone for their hard work. It doesn't have to be elaborate, just a simple "Great job today, team," or "Thanks for your contribution" goes a long way. It helps people feel valued and appreciated, which builds goodwill and strengthens the connection. That kind of positive communication fosters a culture of trust and respect, which is at the heart of strong relationships.
That's such an important point. Positive feedback can turn a simple interaction into a lasting connection. And when it comes to building online relationships, it's also essential to be patient and understanding. We all have different communication styles, and sometimes things can get lost in translation online. So, being empathetic is key. If you sense tension or miscommunication, address it with care. For example, if you're in a chat and notice someone might be upset or frustrated, reach out privately to ask if everything is okay or if there's anything you can do to help. Showing empathy and being open to having honest conversations helps smooth over any bumps and strengthens the relationship in the long run.
Exactly. Empathy goes a long way, especially when working remotely or communicating online. People don't have that immediate feedback of seeing your facial expressions or hearing the tone in your voice, so showing empathy through your words and actions becomes even more important. Another important factor to keep in mind is maintaining boundaries. Being approachable is important, but respecting personal boundaries in online communication is equally crucial. If someone says they're unavailable for a few hours or requests to not be contacted after certain hours, respecting those boundaries helps build mutual respect. It shows you understand that everyone has their own time and space, and that will strengthen the relationship over time.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, building relationships online is no different than building them in person. It's all about being thoughtful, respectful, and authentic. Whether it's showing up consistently, providing positive feedback, engaging with empathy, or respecting boundaries, all of these actions contribute to strong, meaningful connections. And remember, relationships take time to build, especially online, where you don't have the luxury of face-to-face interactions. So, be patient and keep putting in the effort to show that you care.
Right. And when you do build those relationships, the benefits are incredible. You'll see more collaboration, better communication, and a greater sense of trust between everyone involved. It's all about being genuine, proactive, and supportive in your interactions. So, let's keep that in mind moving forward. Strong online relationships are built on the foundation of trust, empathy, and consistent communication. And those are the keys to success in the digital age.
Well, that wraps up today's episode on mastering online communication. We've covered a lot of ground, from email etiquette to handling sensitive topics, and we hope you found these tips helpful. Remember, online communication is an essential skill, and the more you practice, the more confident and effective you'll become.
Absolutely, Adam. Whether you're sending emails, chatting with colleagues, or navigating tricky conversations, it's all about being mindful and intentional with your words. If you take the time to build positive relationships and communicate with empathy, you'll be amazed at how much smoother your interactions will be.
Exactly. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell, and share this podcast with anyone who might find it helpful.
Thanks for joining us today, and remember, communication is the key to success, both online and offline. We'll catch you in the next episode. Take care, everyone, and happy communicating. Thank you.